You've heard it all before as an INFP. You're too sensitive. Why can't you be realistic? Why does it take you so long to just make a decision? As an INFP, these criticisms feel painfully familiar, I'm sure, because I've heard them a bunch too. But here's what critics don't understand is that you are using your strengths to the best. You're bringing what is important about you to the world when you lean into some of these aspects. Yes, there are different areas that we can all improve upon. I understand that. But in this video, we're going to break down the 5 most common criticisms that INFPs often get, and I'm going to tell you how to reframe those in your mind, at least for yourself or for other people. So the intention of this is for you to see those criticisms in a different way, so that you can start leaning into your strengths, so that you can appreciate who you are as a person and show up in the world in a way that is more aligned with your personality type. And it's not your fault. The way that you are is because of your personality type. If anybody else had the same personality type, likely they would be going through similar situations and circumstances. I am of the camp that you should not want to change your personality type. And yes, I have been on the other side of that. And I know a lot of us are. A lot of us, we get the diagnosis of being an INFP and we're just like, oh God, no, what am I going to do now? But really, it gets better once you start leaning into your strengths and once you have put yourself in a bunch of different contexts so that you really understand who you are as a person. But first, let me talk a little bit about the structure of INFP personality type. So we have our dominant function, introverted feeling. This is what I call the soul. Cognitive functions are the Lego pieces that build into your Myers-Briggs personality type. Or if you're like me, which you probably are because you're an INFP, you personify everything. And they are like the characters in the Fellowship of 8, your council, the parts of yourself, your questing party within, different parts of yourself, like that movie Inside Out. The Japanese title's Inside Head, and I always get confused which is the actual one. But it's like you have all these different parts of yourself. And introverted feeling is consulting with all of those parts to make sure that every part gets a say. And within that takes a long time. And it's a big assessment, like your conscience, your feelings, your values, what's important to you. It's always sifting through all that, looking for a harmonious decision. Okay, and I'll talk about one more, I think, that's important here is your auxiliary function. This is extroverted intuition. I call it the explorer. It's about innovation, connecting ideas, brainstorming. It's the squirrel that's in its lab creating a bomb and a bunch of guns and all these different like toys and stuff like that, gadgets, tinkering around with things. It's a very optimistic, explosive, excitable type of energy. You put those together and you can kind of get an understanding of what it's like to be an INFP. But not everybody likes that. 25% of the world are intuitives, and I think it's like 15% use extroverted intuition, that NP aspect of your personality type, as a strength. So, of course, people are going to have a skewed impression and a lot of projection. So that's something to go into all of this with. So I'm going to tell you 5 reframes for each of these criticisms, and the reframes are based off of Mind Lines by Michael L. Hall, that's his name, which also comes from Robert Dilts' Sleight of Mouth. This is all neurolinguistic programming stuff, and that doesn't really matter. I just want to pay due where it's due. These are ways of thinking differently and flipping complaints, limiting beliefs on their head. So here are some mind lines to reshape how you think about this, and maybe some that you can deliver to other people too. So a lot of people will say, you're too sensitive. I'm sure you've heard that one. Well, really, your emotional depth enables rich understanding that allows for meaningful connections. We can do what's called chunking down. I notice subtle emotional cues that others missed, which help me understand unspoken needs. That's way different. Number 2, model of the world. In a world that needs more empathy, sensitivity is a superpower. Number 3 is called positive prior intention. My sensitivity exists to help me deeply understand human experiences. Number 4, identity framing. I'm not too sensitive. I'm emotionally intelligent and attuned. Number 5, metaphoring. Like a high-precision instrument, my sensitivity picks up valuable signals others can't detect. Now, how does that feel to listen to those in a reframed perspective? I like them. It makes me feel good. And make sure that you also, though, use your emotional intelligence to mediate conflicts, to counsel others, to support people. It's like a healer, a priest, a druid, or something like that in a role-playing game. People need heals. They might not always appreciate the healer, but they do need it. And I've noticed that the more that I give and serve other people, the better I feel about myself and the better the world is. Number 2, you live in a fantasy world. Your imagination, that extroverted intuition aspect of yourself, is a powerful tool for innovation and creativity and problem solving. It's really important. So let's look at the reframes. Number 1, counterexample. Many great innovators were called dreamers before their ideas changed the world. I like that. Number 2, outcome of outcome. My imagination helps me envision solutions that don't exist yet. Extroverted intuition always expands out. You get one idea, springboarding to one thing, and then you go to another one and another one. Number 3, positive prior causation. This fantasy world is where creativity and innovation are born. I love it. Love it. So good. And I can spend all day in there. So, yes, I do live in a fantasy world, but I love it here. Number 4, criteria and value. The ability to imagine better possibilities is essential for human progress. So good. Number 5, reality strategy. I use imagination as a tool to bridge current reality with future potential. It's okay. Yeah. I can see the potential in situations that are maybe not good for other people, and I can find different opportunities because of it, because I'm always using my imagination. How about you? And as an action step, make sure that your creative visions are put into concrete projects that have real-world impact. Like, I know it's fun to imagine things and to play in here, but once you start like creating and manifesting it, putting it into something in the world, whether you're writing a story and you actually publish it, not just in here, like sharing it into the world, I think everything just gets so much better. It's a bit scary, I know. I do it all the time. I've made like 1,400, 500 videos. I know. But I wouldn't do it any other way, knowing now what I know. Number 3, you can't make decisions. So introverted feeling is not always the fastest decision-making function. It can be pretty fast. I see my hood's all wonky. It can be pretty fast, but it takes time to sort through how you feel about something. It's not based off objective logic. And it can be fast when you already know. When you know your values, when you know it's important to you, decisions are really fast. When it doesn't really matter, like, what am I going to eat? I don't know. It can take a while. Yes, that's very true. But when it's important, I've noticed that I make quick decisions, as long as I've been through a similar situation before, which is why I was saying it's important to get yourself into new contexts and do different things so you know more about who you are as a person. So know that your thoughtful process can lead to more sustainable and considered choices. It's not just about taking an action and seeing what happens, although that is a strategy that does work. And some of us need a bit more of that in our lives, myself included. It's also like you spend time considering, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Other people don't necessarily do that. So let's look at the reframes. The first one is to reframe the external belief. I make thorough decisions by considering multiple perspectives. That's very true. Number 2, first outcome. My careful consideration prevents costly mistakes. Number 3, well, if you frame it differently, you can say I choose to be thorough rather than rush important choices. Number 4, ecology framing. My decision-making style ensures better outcomes for everyone involved. Number 5, other abstractions. I'm not indecisive. I'm a wisdom seeker, gathering important insights. That's a fun one. That's a fun one. You might need to give some time to other people to have them consider that one. I don't think everybody would buy it. But some of these are going to resonate more than others. Number 4, you need to be more realistic. So we are intuitives. We spend time in idea space. That is our main way of perceiving the world, of learning about the world. And it is something that is intrinsically tied to our personality type. So a lot of sensors will see it as a flaw, something that needs to be changed. And yes, the sensory world is important. It's important to be grounded. It's important to pay attention to what is going on. But also, there are a lot of benefits that come from being an intuitive. I love it. Your idealism, that, NFs have a lot of idealism, especially INFPs. That idealism drives innovation, positive change in the world, and that can be the cause of massive change and reconstruction in a good way. So let's look at the reframes. Number 1, allness framing. Every major advancement started as an unrealistic idea. Number 2, eternity framing. Today's realism was yesterday's idealism. So it's looking at like the very, very far end game, what happens. Number 3, reflexively apply to yourself or to the speaker. Who decides what's realistic in a rapidly changing world? Interesting. Number 4, identity framing. I'm a visionary who sees possibilities beyond current limitations. I like that. I think maybe you could tone it down a little bit. I'm a visionary. I see things that most people don't see. I see an obstacle as something that we can navigate around or get over, go under, break through, change, turn around. A bunch of different options that come from seeing things differently. Number 5, metaphoring. Like a telescope, I see distant possibilities others haven't spotted yet. I like the idea of like climbing up a tree or something like that and looking down from a different perspective, or opening portals and jumping to different ones and seeing from different angles. I think it's a nice perspective to have. And when somebody says I'm not being realistic, maybe I'm not seeing the sensory world, but I am being aware of what comes out of that, what comes out from the consequences of doing something or not doing something, and how it impacts an individual. Yeah. Likely myself first, and then, hopefully I put that onto other people and see how it impacts them too. So one thing that you can do if you want to change this a bit or work with it a bit though, is to have these big dreams that we all have and then break them down into realistic, tangible steps. Then take those steps, make concrete action towards your dreams and your goals. It's great to have a big dream, but what's even better is to actually be taking actionable steps towards that big dream. Gotta have both. Number 5, you're too quiet or you're too passive. Couldn't quite figure out how to split both of those. So your sensitive way of engaging with the world allows for deeper connection with other people. It allows for other people to assert themselves, to express themselves, to be heard, to be seen. Part of the INFP personality type's superpowers is the brain state that you go in based off Dr. Dario Nardi's research that shows that we go into flow while listening to other people, while listening for who they are, their intention, their identity, their values, what's important to them. That's awesome. And yeah, you got to be quiet to do that. You don't have to be passive to do that, but you got to be quiet to listen to other people. 1, chunking down. I speak deliberately, making each word count. That is very true. I've been in many circumstances and situations, as I fumble over my words there, where I don't say anything because I'm thinking, like, how do I want to deliver this? Which word fits the tone the best? Not necessarily the dictionary meaning of it, but the resonance that I want to convey, the metaphor that's important. So yeah, it takes a lot of time and consideration. And then the world has moved on. Number 2, model of the world. Quiet observation leads to deeper understanding. I spend a lot of time in deep understanding mode, observing, watching people, watching things, how they're developing, playing with ideas in my brain, in my mind. And I think it's a nice place to be. Other people will say that I'm, zoning out and just staring off into the wild. But there's so much going on inside. Number 3, positive prior intention. My selective engagement ensures meaningful contributions. I want people to be able to contribute, to be heard, to be seen, to express themselves. Even if that means sometimes I don't. I don't express myself. Not that I don't want them to do that. Number 4, counterexample. History's greatest changes often started with quiet reflection. Probably not going to think of new ways to succeed in the world in a big way by just constantly taking actions. Like there's a necessity for reflection and review and thinking about things in different ways. And that is one of our superpowers for sure. Feeling about things in different ways. How's that? Number 5, criteria and value. I value depth over volume. Quality over quantity. Yes, that's the one. I think that's the one for me. I definitely value depth over volume. Friendships are like that too. People in my life. Extroverted intuition will say, no, get more. Spread out. Think of more ideas. Do more things. Start new projects. But a lot of times in peopling aspects, there's a depth over volume for sure. And the desire for quality over quantity too. So it's always okay to choose strategic moments to express yourself, to share your insights with the world, and look for maximum impact, as well as supporting other people to, lean into their strengths. If you're listening for who they are as a person, you're trying to figure out their personality type too, maybe. You are then able to support them so that they can show up and shine, in the world in a nice way. As long as it doesn't provide or prove to be too taxing for you, Remember that these are not weaknesses to fix. They are strengths to leverage. The very things that people criticize a lot of us INFPs for are actually the sources of our greatest strengths, our greatest contributions to the world that other people just don't see. And if we don't know what those are, or we take other people's criticism as truth instead of reframing it for ourselves, then we aren't able to show up in a way that is supportive and activated in the world. If you want my help with that, you can go to inowfeelpositive.com, get the free 5-day INFP personality type tutorial to teach you more about your personality type and all the awesome things and the struggles too. So you can have a different relationship with the weaker aspects of yourself. And if you want to go deeper into this whole thing, you can go to the Evolve community, evolve.geekpsychology.com. We do monthly coaching calls, and you get access to all 6 courses that I have out right now. So check it out. All right. Peace.